So an interesting thing about being twins, we found out a couple years ago when my daughter took one of those DNA tests, 23andMe, and it came back and said she had a half sister. Her half sister was Tara's daughter. So it's just kind of interesting. We must be identical twins because their mother's DNA was the same. And then obviously they have separate fathers.
Hi, and welcome back. Today we're going to talk about twins. So as we've stated before, Theresa and I are twins, and we're joined today by Trina, but also by Theresa's daughter, Kaylee, and our mom, Linda. And we're going to talk about what it's like growing up as twins, being the mom of twins, as Kaylee has twin girls. So, how was everybody's week?
Good. Fantastic.
Good. Well, I think that being a twin, of course, I don't know anything different, but I think it's so cool, especially the older we've gotten after having our kids together. I mean, like close in age. I would say we've grown a little closer as twins and as friends, because growing up, I remember there was a time I couldn't stand you. Not quite that bad, but just would not be friends.
Did not know that.
Well, you just bugged me.
As my eyes are popping out of its sockets, you can't see that as a listener, but I am a little astounded that you just said that.
Well, yeah, one time we were driving to a Women of Faith conference. We were with Connie and Cheryl, and you kept telling me how to drive. And so I pulled into a gas station and put it in park and said, fine, you get out and drive.
Sounds like a married couple.
Yeah.
I do not recall that at all, but okay.
Yeah.
Well, now you know not to critique her driving, especially when her gas needle is on E.
Exactly.
As we learned last week.
But I think a lot of that is, in high school, like I was engaged our junior year of high school, so I was just focused on that. And so maybe that's kind of why it was, you weren't following along on what I wanted you to do, kind of thing. Because I'm older by 7 minutes.
That's great.
Yeah. So Mom, why don't you tell the story of back in that day, you did not know you were having twins because there wasn't an ultrasound or anything. So yeah, tell us that story. How we came.
Not only did I not know, I did not have any labor.
Wow, and of twins. Okay.
So I had a doctor's appointment, and he said, "You're not going home. You're going to the hospital."
So you did know you were pregnant.
Yeah.
That's a start.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
We were your first.
Yes, you were my first. So I had a doctor's appointment. He said I had to go straight to the hospital, and I did not have any labor, but I had a nurse that pretty much stayed with me. And then the water broke, and so Tara was born first, and she weighed 4'11", and I had gained 40 pounds. So the doctor was a little concerned that the baby was so small after gaining so much weight. But they put her in an incubator right away, and the nurse that had stayed with me happened to come back into the delivery room, and she's pushing around on my stomach, and she said, "Doctor, I believe there's another one." And so Theresa was born 7 minutes later, and she weighed
6 something. No, I don't know. I just know she took all my food.
I think Theresa weighed 5'7". Is that sound? I think. And then, so Tara had to have hooked up to all these tubes because she was so small, because she went down to almost 4 pounds. And Theresa and I went home, but back then you stayed in the hospital about 10 days. And so then, one point the doctor said Tara was almost up to 5 pounds, but she was strong enough to pull the tubes out. She was strong enough to go home. So she went home before she weighed 5 pounds.
So she was taking control of situations even before she left the hospital. That's what I'm hearing.
More or less.
Well, I had to because I was left alone. They didn't come back to visit me.
It was kind of a sad thing to look at.
Oh my goodness.
Do not edit that out.
Because she was so small and the breathing and all hooked up to all the tubes. I mean, tubes were everywhere, but she didn't have any health problems. She was just small.
Not anymore.
So what were your thoughts because it's emotional enough to go through labor, but now you know there's 2 instead of 1. So how did you process that?
I don't ever remember a process.
Because you came from a big family, so you're used to lots
I came from a family of 10. I started babysitting when I was 11. And so, I mean, it was no big deal to me, although it was a big deal to our family because my grandmother said that it had been 50 years since there had been any multiple births. But my husband, on his side of the family, there were a lot of twins and triplets.
What did Dad say when the doctor went out and said you have twins?
Well, Dad wasn't there, but my mom was there. And my mom was elated. And then when Dad came, yeah, he was thrilled. But
He didn't pass out or anything like
no, he did not pass out. No.
So flip that to Kaylee. So 50 years later, how was it for you having twins? Because now with technology, you knew you were having twins.
Yes. Well, when I first, peed on the stick, I was 3 weeks and I'm like, well, this turned up really fast. But I was like, well, this is my second pregnancy. Maybe it's like that. Then I went to the doctor for my first appointment and they did an ultrasound and she said, oh, baby is looking so healthy and good and everything. And you're doing great. And then the probe moved, and had it not moved, we would never have known that there were 2 babies inside of me. When it moved, she goes, wait a second. And she went back and forth and back and forth. She goes, you have 2. You're having twins. And I just was like, no, oh my goodness. And I was all by myself because my husband was working and he works a lot. And I just started bawling because I didn't know what to do or expect. It was quite a shock. It was crazy.
So then you could at least process that through until...
Yes. On my drive home from the doctors, I was processing like, okay, we're going to need 2 of everything and we're going to do this. This is, yeah.
So what was Ben's reaction? How did you tell him?
So I went to work and I was feeling all of the pregnancy symptoms, and I had never felt them quite so soon with my first pregnancy with my oldest. And so my coworker at the time was joking and she said, oh, what if you have twins? And I said, you better not hope I have twins. If I do, I'm going to have to quit my job and stay home. And her face was just like in shock. She was like, oh, you're going to leave me. And then I'm going to be, stuck all by myself with somebody that I might not know or not like. And so we jokingly she just kept saying, what if you have twins? And then when I went to my first doctor's appointment and found out I was having twins, I thought, oh boy, this is going to be interesting. So I Ben was out of town working at the time. And when I got home, I FaceTimed him and I showed him the ultrasound pictures of the two babies. And his face was just in shock. And I screenshot the picture of the FaceTime because I was like, I'm never gonna get this back. Let's screenshot it and remember it forever. So I have that picture, and it's his contact picture for now. So it's funny, but
that's very
was-
interesting to
he
hear the
was
difference.
very much in
Yeah.
shock. Yes. So
Well, your birthing of the twins is a great story. So you got to tell us about.
yes. So with having twins, you are high risk pregnancy. So they want you, when you get closer to your due date, they want you to do non-stress tests. When I was pregnant with the twins, I had to go to the hospital to do the non-stress tests. Some doctors' offices will do them there, but my doctor's office did not do them. So I had to go to the hospital. Where I delivered my girls was 45 minutes to an hour from my house. So I had to drive that far to the hospital as well to go have these non-stress tests done every week. So I went in for my routine non-stress tests, and I told my husband, I want you to come with me just in case. And he said, do you really think this is it? And I'm like, I don't know. So I want you to come just in case. And we had already had our hospital bags and everything packed into the car. So we drove up to where I did my non-stress tests, and I told the nurse all of my symptoms and everything. And she's like, well, you weren't dilated very much at your last doctor's appointment. We'll just see how you do through your tests. And I'm like, okay. So I started having more contractions, and she's like, are you feeling that? And I'm like, yeah, it's just a little uncomfortable, but it's not anything terrible. And she said, well, let me check you again. And she checked my dilation again. And here I had dilated just a little bit more. So she said, we're just going to keep monitoring you. So it was a much longer stress test than the normal ones that I had previously. And then she said, how do you feel? What do you want to do? And I said, well, I'm uncomfortable. I just would like to have my babies. And I mean, who wouldn't at that point?
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
And
Because
so
you were how far along?
I was almost 36 weeks, just a day short of 36 weeks, which is technically full term. So she said, well, let me call your doctor. She went and called the doctor and came back, and she said that we're having babies tonight. And I'm like, perfect. Let's get this show on the road. So they admit me, and I called Ben, and because he was downstairs in his truck working from his laptop in the car, because I told him, just stay in the truck and work, because I don't want you to come in with me for my non-stress test if you don't need to be there. And at that time, COVID was happening. So you couldn't have anybody come to your appointments with you anyways.
Not even your husband?
It depended,
Oh.
but I felt like it wasn't necessary for him to be there. He went to some of my ultrasounds and stuff like that with me, yes. But I felt like this was just a normal routine thing. I'd just be in and out, but I'd see what they said. So I called him and I said, it's happening. Bring the bags up. Let's go. And so he brought the bags up, and they moved me to a different room. And then they gave me Pitocin, and things started progressing. She said, you're still not all the way there yet. And I said, okay. So what they had me do was walk the halls of the hallway. And I walked and walked and walked. And Ben said that I probably walked for 45 minutes because I just kept walking and walking and walking. And he said, then it started getting a little tougher. So then we went back to the room and they checked me again. And then they called my doctor to come in. And then we started like the process of the epidural and getting that going. And at that point I was 7 centimeters, maybe 7.5 centimeters. And then
The doctor.
they called the doctor and they got my epidural at 7 centimeters. And then they said, okay, let's do this. And they broke my water. And then they jokingly, at this time, it was 11:50, I would say. And my doctor joked and said, oh, you're probably going to have your twins born on different days because of the time. And I said, no, I don't want them born on different days. I want them born on the same day. And everybody thinks this is a really stupid reason, but my reasoning for this is because I didn't want people to say, oh, are they even really twins because they're born on different days? Because, the nurses at the doctor's offices and stuff, they would joke with me about that. And I knew that. So I thought, no, we're not going to do that. I'm not going to hear that for the rest of my life. So, and then I thought, well, insurance now, sometimes they're crazy. So they would give me grief about it being on different days and stuff. So,
But Ben wanted them.
Ben wanted them born on different days because he thought it would be so cool to have twins, but them born on different days. So they each have their own day. And I'm like, no, like, you just don't understand. I'm the one giving birth. This is what we're doing. But anyways, at the time I had a cold. So I started coughing, and the oldest of the twins, Hadley, she started to deliver herself because I kept coughing. And she's like, oh, we're almost there. And I'm like, no, I seriously do not want them born on different days. And then my doctor says, everybody stop. And now, just to give you a little background on this picture of this room in the hospital, there are like 30 people in this room because you have to have a whole team for each patient. So I had to have a NICU team for each baby. The anesthesiologist was there. You had to have a team of nurses for each person, me and the girls. And it just, one thing after another. And then there were people bringing in equipment, and then the doctors, and then the pediatrician was there, and it just, everybody was there. It was crazy.
So different.
They must not have delivered babies before.
Yeah.
2 babies at a time.
Oh, they were prepared for anything.
The only people I had when your mom and Tara were born was a nurse and the doctor.
Oh, well, not these people.
Well,
And the task
and
was
then
completed.
the nurse that had stayed with me, she came in after Tara was born.
Mm-hmm.
So there was one hospital staff for each baby versus one team of hospital staff for
Yeah.
Kaylee.
Well, that's what happens in 50 years, and knowing that they're twins and they're.
Yes.
Were we premature? Were we?
We were a month early.
Oh, so still
So,
30. Yeah.
Yeah. So she said, everybody stop. And everybody just kind of was like, what is happening right now? And she held Hadley's head for 5 minutes until the clock struck midnight. And then she finally delivered the rest of her because I wanted them born on the same day. And so she just held her hand or held her head as she's just inside me for 5 whole minutes. And so Hadley was born at midnight, and then Josie was born 5 minutes after her. And Josie was actually breech. And I did not realize this until just a couple of months ago. My husband told me she was breech. And my doctor, we had dealt with this before, I guess, and she flipped her inside of me and delivered her, but her umbilical cord was wrapped around her neck and she came out a little blue. And so then she didn't cry when she came out, and I started freaking out because, like, that's how you know they're okay, is when they start crying and they're breathing for the first time outside of the womb. And they were trying and trying. They tried for a couple minutes, and finally she started to cry, and it put me at ease. But I remember freaking out a little bit. And I said, I don't hear her cry. And the nurses said, it's okay. It'll be okay. And they were updating the doctor, but in medical terms. So I couldn't understand exactly what was happening. But I do remember my husband saying that it was crazy, and it's a miracle that she is, okay. And so they put her on oxygen for a few hours after we had her, and Hadley got to just stay with me, but they took Josie to put her on oxygen. She didn't go to the NICU because the hospital didn't have a NICU, but they did.
Because they were all in your room.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, they don't have a NICU unit at the hospital there. So they said if anything happens, if she gets worse, we'll have to transport her via life flight to Toledo and have them, kind of work with her. And I'm like, I really don't want that to happen. But 4 hours on oxygen, and she is got the lungs of a warrior. She's got the loudest scream.
So
You didn't know that until just a couple months ago?
Mm-hmm.
And there too.
Mm-hmm.
You went 2 years without realizing that.
Mm-hmm. He said he didn't want to tell me and freak me out. But yeah, she's...
Makes you more thankful, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Another thing to be thankful for.
Well, and she's one that you say trying to keep her alive.
Oh yeah, she's a hard one to keep alive. She's been to the ER twice in less than 6 months this year. First she busted her tip of her pinky finger off. Then she had a febrile seizure 5 months later on her second birthday of all days. So she just, she's...
And I
She's a
remember
little turkey lurkey.
I remember when you guys brought them home, Ben saying that you had them in separate beds, and one of them, I want to say it's Josie, just kept crying and crying, and you put them together, and then it settled them both.
Yes. And now it's weird because they sleep in separate beds. They can't sleep together because they
So all of our listeners need to get a picture of what's going on right now. So we are sitting in Mom's living room, and Tara, Theresa, and Kaylee are sitting on the couch, and Mom and I are sitting in chairs facing them. And Hadley, Josie, and Olivia one's sleeping and the other two are over here playing. So when you hear toys in the background, you'll know where they're coming from.
And for when Josie went to the ER the second time on her second birthday, and the grandparents were there, and you guys had already left, and Hadley, I think we did tell you this, but Hadley kept asking, where's Josie? Where's Josie?
Yes, they're inseparable, which it's crazy to me because they look out for each other in a way. What one does, the other one has to do or get. So if one of them gets a special treat, they say Hadley needs one too, or Josie needs one too. So yeah, they're two peas in a pod for sure. And I was told they were fraternal because they each had their separate sacks. So it's funny that, they still shared the same place in the womb, but had separate things. And they are separate people and separate individuals and like different things. However, they're still one, if that makes sense.
Well, there's just something about our husbands will get so mad because Theresa and I can say one word or just a few words, and then we'll finish each other's sentences. And so it's just that, I don't know, twin telepathy or something, but we subconsciously think they should get our shortcut. Our thought process. And they'll each say, I'm not Theresa or I'm not Tara. And yeah, it drives them nuts. But it was fun growing up as twins because one time, I believe it was in Sunday school, Dad said to us, it was at church in Arcadia, Dad said to us, "Oh, why don't you pretend to be the other
Yes.
person?" And that teacher did not like it. And we got in trouble. And it
Yeah.
was Dad's idea. But yeah, it was fun. And we would try to play off like with when I was dating Tom, you would try to pretend to be me.
I remember that one time.
Yeah.
He came up behind me and put his arm around me, and I just kind of like gave him an elbow, and he's like, "Oh, yeah."
Back to Kaylee, you had the twins in separate beds.
Mm-hmm.
Tara and Theresa slept in the same bed. They were probably a year or better than a year old before I separated them. But one slept at one end of the bed and the other slept at the other end of the bed. And they always I always dressed them alike. If one got dirty, they both got chained.
Even if one was
That's
dry.
the first time mom thing.
And until they went to school, and then they no longer wanted to dress alike. So I would buy them the same thing, but different color. But talking about Dad having you switch, you did that in school as well. He told you to do that. I don't remember at the church, but I remember at the school he did that, and they wanted to put you in separate classes.
We were in separate, well, not in kindergarten.
No, but
No.
in first grade, we did go to separate classes.
But yeah, you got in trouble that time for switching. But Dad talked you into it, doing it.
Oh, well, maybe I remembered the story wrong. I thought it was Sunday school.
That happened in school. I was thinking it was first grade.
And I do remember a good friend in high school of ours saying, oh my goodness, I think we were still in school, but it was probably our senior year, saying it's kind of hard being friends with twins because you feel like they have their own little niche and their own little thing, and you're coming in the middle of it. And I just remember being so surprised by that. Like, I didn't think anything of that. And why would someone be hesitant to be our friend because we're twins? But like you said, we don't know any different, right? And we just think it's,
You made them feel like a third wheel.
I guess so. Yeah.
So is that how you felt, Trina, being the youngest?
I still feel that way, even this much later. Yeah. I kind of like you're in the land of misfit toys. Like I think you described it perfectly. We were at a craft show at Brenda's house,
Oh, yeah.
and you had mentioned something about there's nothing like twins. Like there's no other relationship that can compare to that. And so I don't think I could describe it better than your friend did in high school, Teresa. It's neat to watch your interactions, but it's also like that is definitely like you have your own clique.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not good or bad. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
I've learned to accept it. And I haven't even given therapist a paycheck for it yet. So it's all good.
Tracy used to get so upset because people couldn't tell you two apart.
Tracy being our brother.
Yeah. He would get so upset because people couldn't tell you apart. I don't know what the problem is.
Well, that explains Tracy's personality right there.
So in pictures, didn't you always put Tara on the left and Teresa on the right?
That was not intentional.
But that's the way
That's
it is
just-
in most of their pictures.
Did you do that intentional, Kaylee? No.
So what was the most unexpected thing about having twins that you thought Kaylee, you knew you were having twins. So is there something that you were like, oh, I know this is how it's going to go, and it's not been that way, or not really?
In some cases, yes. Like the lack of sleep that I get. I knew I would lose a lot of my sleep, but I wasn't expecting to lose this much sleep. And
Was that just in the beginning or even now as
even now
toddlers?
as toddlers, because of the sleep regression throughout their lives. So in the beginning, I did formula. I did not breastfeed because I thought, okay, this is going to be way too much for me. And if I want any quality of life, I need to formula feed because a newborn eats every 2 to 3 hours. A formula fed baby should eat every 2 to 4 hours. So we did every 3 hours feeding them. And with that, they feeding, I couldn't feed both of them at the same time. And a lot of the time I was by myself because my husband worked, and I just, no one's going to come in the middle of the night and help me feed anyways. I got to figure it out and do it myself. So,
And that is Kaylee. That is Kaylee's personality.
I am the oldest, and that is, I'm very independent. Anyways, so I had to figure it out myself. So I would feed one and then I would feed the other. And every 3 hours, like clockwork. So after I would get done feeding them and changing them and putting them back to bed, I would probably only get an hour and a half of sleep every 3 hours. So an hour and a half, and then you're back up doing it again. And then you're feeding, you do the process, and then an hour and a half of sleep. And with a toddler as well as twins, it was a lot harder because you're trying to entertain your toddler and feed your toddler and keep your toddler alive as you're trying to, keep these babies alive. So that was very hard for me. And I knew it was going to be hard, but I didn't realize until doing it how hard it was going to be. And having a set schedule and organization as well, I didn't realize in the beginning would be so helpful, but I learned as it went on that also plays a key role in that. Kids love structure and they thrive with it. So I always have like a set schedule with them. I always, 3 hours, every 3 hours feeding, and then your naps are at the same time every day. And, we just keep our routine, and I felt like that really helped. Like you have to be on top of everything. And then the organization with all the doctor's appointments and stuff like that and keeping track of everything. It was a lot.
So, Mom, you had twins first. So how was it? Was there something that, you didn't know you were having twins, so you couldn't really prepare as much as in your mind thinking, but was there something that was unexpected besides the blessings that you received from
I don't remember of anything being unexpected. I think it's different because you were first, and I had been raised around kids all my life, babysitting and younger siblings. So there's nothing that I can say was really a surprise.
Except for having twins.
Yeah. That was your unexpected.
The first few months, I had help taking care of them, but even when I was doing it myself, it just come natural to me.
Yeah. So is there any advice you would give to moms who are expecting or who have twins that you learned?
I think you have to roll with the flow of it. I'm unlike Kaylee. She has to have structure. I am not. I had structure, but not
A set
rigid
routine, yeah.
structure. My Tara and Theresa were not a problem. And I'm not saying Kaylee's was a problem, but they
You didn't have to try to keep us alive.
Well, Theresa, one time we were in the Big N store in Tiffin, and she fell out of the cart on her head. And that was that's a problem. I think she was 9 months old or something like that. And
When you're hearing this,
had to rush her down to the hospital, that was dramatic. And so whenever I see kids in carts in the store, I just panic. Well, I don't panic. I just want to take those parents and say,
Get PTSD.
and I think she is also the one while I was at work and my mom was watching them. I think she is also the one that, when my mom picked me up from work, her hand was all bandaged up. And here she had poured or got a hold of hot water or something and burned her hand pretty bad.
so Teresa's the adventurous one.
You are the Josephine.
I was the second one, so's Josie.
Yeah. And Hadley is, we're going to follow the rules. So we're going to wait and see how this pans out for Josie before I do it. That is true. You were Hadley.
Hadley sucks her 2 middle fingers,
Yes.
which I did too.
Yes.
So Hadley's my
And-
spirit twin.
And Teresa did not suck any fingers or thumbs.
Oh, I thought she sucked her thumb.
No, she drank pickle juice.
Oh, yeah. She claims I fed her pickle juice, which I did not.
So, Kaylee, do you have any advice?
Just to take it day by day. It's a lot. Take a lot of deep breaths. Take 5 minutes to try to be by yourself and do something for yourself, whether it is 5 minutes of quiet time where you just lay in bed, or 5 minutes of reading a book, or 5 minutes in a shower, or a bath. If you can do a bath in 5 minutes, if you get more time, take a bath. Just something for yourself as well, but take it day by day because every day is different and it does get better. I mean, my girls are a little bit more self-sufficient now, so it's a little better than having newborns, but
So,
Yeah.
Kaylee, is there anything? So your mom was a twin and your aunt. So, and now you have twins. Is there anything like when you first were told you're having twins, or did you relate anything back? Like, okay, I seen Mom and Aunt Tara do this. This is what I can expect. Or is that not even a thought?
I mean, I look at you now and think, I hope that they are close like you two as they get older. I've also
There'll be a period of time where they can see.
Yeah, I've heard. I've heard that it's like sometimes they do drift apart and then they can come back, and sometimes they don't come back. And they just treat each other like siblings instead of like twins. I hope they continue to have that twin connection throughout their life, and can continue to be as close.
Yeah. Well, this is coming to the end of our podcast. So Trina's biting at the bit to tell us what she's grateful for today. So we go around and we just say something we're grateful for. So we'll start with Trina.
I am grateful for the beautiful white snow on the ground today. We got a couple inches last night and it's just very beautiful to look at, and the roads were clear, so I didn't even mind driving today. So
I would say a few inches, not a couple.
um,
I think we got 4 inches.
I didn't get a measuring stick out, but it went up to the top of my shoe, whatever that means.
Mom?
I am thankful that I have the privilege of watching not only grandchildren, but great-grandchildren grow.
And I'm thankful for the sun that's melting the snow.
How different we all are. I was thankful for the clear roads going 40 minutes to pick up cake for our sister-in-law's surprise 50th birthday.
Well, I was thankful for the sun too, but somebody took my answer.
Well, you can be thankful for that as well.
I am.
Okay, Teresa's going to close us in prayer, and we hope you all have a great week.
God, we thank you for all that you do for us. We do thank you for the beautiful weather that we have had, and we thank you for family. We thank you for bonding. We thank you for the miracle of birth, and not just one child, but also a blessing, double blessing when there are two. And we just are so appreciative for all that you do for us. We ask that you be with us the rest of this day, the rest of this week, as we encounter others and find our love goggles as we interact with them. And amen.
Love goggles.
Oh.